Welcome back to Ritual Hobby and Art. Today I'm on the trail along the Tennessee River in Knoxville, Tennessee. The river runs 652 miles all the way and starts at the confluence of the Holston and French Broad Rivers here in Knoxville. There are several parks and trails along the river, and that will play into our paintings in this video. From the Will Skelton Greenway, you can see the French Broad River as it approaches the Holston River. The Holston River Park has a nice greenway for viewing the Holston as it nears its end. IAM's Nature Center is located along the shore at the beginning of the river. Here's a painting I did several years ago looking across the river at farm buildings. Next to IAM's is the Dickinson Island, also known as Knoxville Downtown Island, and its airport for small planes and helicopters. The Will Skelton Greenway passes IAM's by the airport all the way to Island Home Park. From here you can see your first glimpse of downtown Knoxville. A couple miles to the west is Suttree Landing Park, named after the main character in the novel by Cormac McCarthy, published in 1979. Looking across the river, you might see the subject of our first painting. Now I'm on the James White Greenway, on the north bank of the river across from Suttree Landing Park. James White Greenway follows the track of the Knoxville and Holston River Railroad, and the greenway connects to other greenways including Morningside and Nayland. It's part of a long set of greenways that actually start at Sequoia Hills Park. As I walk, I'm approaching the item for our first painting. This is a water intake structure from a building of long ago. With it among the river and the trees, I'd like to capture it in a painting. So stay tuned and let's get started. Next painting I'm going to do it in gouache in my little multimedia book, multimedia pad. So I've got the watercolor paper beneath it to kind of protect any other pages. There's a lot going on in the background, but I'm not going to cover it all, and that's my prerogative. I put the watercolor page back behind this page, starting with some cerulean blue for the sky and water. And I'm using a paper towel to help control the water on the brush.
I'm going to go back and work on some of the trees in the background. Nothing too fancy, just trying to define its color. There's other stuff going on, like boat ramps, buildings, and other structures, but I'm not going to include them in this painting. There's going to be trees and branches in the foreground that will cover up a lot of that background detail anyway. And there's a little bit to this other side.
This area that I'm painting to the left includes the James White Parkway, with its bridge over the Tennessee River. Across it, you would access IAMS Nature Center, Island Home Park, Sutri Landing Park, as well as further south to Forks of the River Park, William Hasty Park, and the Urban Wilderness Trail Network, which has a lot of different places to hike.
I had to add a marina that is situated near the intake structure. Got some white gouache out because some of the boats are white. Big surprise. Added some brush to the left, some sticks and that sort of thing. It's going to be in the background as there's a tree standing in front of it. I've got some black gouache and burnt umber watercolor, which will still work with the gouache due to its water-based properties. I'm going to mix them to make the colors of the intake structure. Mixing them will give me the different tones I need. There's a lot of brown in the structure. I can use white gouache, but for lighter areas, I'm going to use the application of water on the brush instead. This will dilute the color and draw it out to give me the lighter hues. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put down some water on the paper just to wet it. Wet the paper. Nothing wrong with that. Make it a crinkly. That's okay. I don't care about that. Doesn't bother me. Just like with acrylic, I'm going to put this down in layers. But since this is water-based, it will mix with pre-existing layers to give me the full set of tones. Nice thing about gouache is nice in that you can put it down and then fine-tune it later in your painting. With acrylic, you put it down, and once it dries, it can no longer be worked as it becomes permanent. See where that's going? I use this flat brush as a lift-out brush to remove painted runoffs or smooth uneven lines. Mainly I'm using round brushes. This is a 10. I used a 14 for some of the larger areas, and then a 6 is what I'll use from, not details, but some of my smaller areas. I have detail brushes that I use for that, for fine details. Very small, thin rigger brushes, or wire or liner brushes. The right side of the structure is much lighter, but I have to get the dark colors down first and then lighten them later. Let's go ahead and skip ahead to some of the progress on this painting. You can see I've added more color and definition to both sides of the structure. I've also added the bridge for the James White Parkway in the background to the left. The second image shows more dark color of the left side, as there will be bushes and branches that will cover this eventually. Now I have started adding trees and bushes in the foreground. The 3 or 4 diagonal lines on the lower right side of the structure are shadows of trees. More branches will be added that support this illusion. Okay, here's the completed version of this painting. All the trees have been added, and there's more definition of the tower or the intake structure. You can see I added a little bit of white gouache to emphasize some of the shadows and light on both sides. And there was some sort of structure out here, more of the marina, and I added that in. But otherwise, I'm happy with how this came out. And so let's move on to some of the other paintings, some of the other river scenes in this video. If you had seen the previous video, Painting the Trail Winter Scenes, here are a couple of those paintings that I did that I didn't finish in the video, but had finished later. First, the dry riverbed from Icy King Park, and then the picture of my father walking in the snow near Ames, Iowa. There are a lot of river scenes in my life and maybe in yours as well, and so I've painted many scenes and probably will continue to paint a lot of scenes. Here are some that I did recently, one of the Tellico Blockhouse. This was featured in a video recently on using masking fluid. The Tellico Blockhouse is located on the Little Tennessee River. This next one is actually it's in Melton Hill Lake, which is on the Clinch River. It's part of a dam system. It's a little quick study of trees that I did after a walk I did on Earth Day, April 22nd. And another area that I have painted before in previous videos is the Clinch River as it passes by the Songbird Trail, the TVA Norris Dam area. And there's certainly more that I may cover in future videos. So stay tuned for those. But for now, let's move on to our last painting and our last trail on this video. I'm walking on a trail at Lakeshore Park along the Tennessee River, further south from downtown Knoxville. I've featured this park before in a previous video on using a portable desk for some plain air. From the pier on this trail, you can see south towards Lyons Island and all the way to the Smoky Mountains in the distance. This vantage from the hill gives a better view of the Smokies. But the vantage from the pier is what I'm going to focus on in my next painting. So I'm going to attempt a painting based on this beautiful view of the river in early spring. Starting out just with a brief sketch so I can tell where the horizon and land areas are going to be located in my painting. I've placed tape down to help give my foreground a defined boundary. I've wetted the paper and put down cerulean blue to capture the sky and clouds. Incidentally, this will be done in watercolor. I've added a natural gray to try to paint the underside or shadow of some of the clouds, doing something similar for the water at the same time. Now, adding land using some basic colors at first and mixing them on the paper with the brush. The background is a little more defined. I've also removed the tape for the foreground. Lion Island has also been added in the middle. Here's a closer look at Lion Island in the near distance. Behind Lion Island is a blue-colored land area, which would be the ridge in the distance. Beyond that is a very light blue mountain shape. This represents the Smoky Mountains in the far distance. For the foreground, I've wet the paper and put down a dark brown color. Then wait a minute and begin scraping the paper with a credit or gift card type plastic item. This will help to create the illusion of rocks. Though not exactly similar to the actual scene, it is an easier way of painting a lot of rocks in one spot. This is a Matthew Palmer lesson that I completed earlier this year, doing the same thing to a Devon seascape in England. The first vegetation begins. Remember, this is early spring, so there won't be a lot of green in this painting. More vegetation is added and more definition of the rocky foreground. All right, well, I've done quite a bit to this. Really working on the rocks here, as I've said before. That's kind of difficult for me. I added some different colors to sort of enhance some of the shadows, some of the darkness in there. Here's a look at the original picture. Now, as you can imagine, I'm not trying to do this exactly like the original. I'm just kind of getting some basic ideas. I am working right now on a little spot right down here where there's some more sticks. So just giving that feel of the sticks over here. Just kind of adding things. I mean, in my mind, this is kind of coming to an end, but to some, this may not be finished. It's about as finished as I want it to be, but I'm going to continue to sort of highlight some of the areas just to give it a little fuller look as far as being a painting. And as far as being something I saw on the trail. Or more like brush. Almost like sagebrush, although this is the wrong side of the country for that kind of thing. But it's not really a bush, it's just a bunch of mess. I'm making it look prettier on the picture than it is in the original view. The way that this watercolor fades as it dries, it's going to kind of blend in anyway, so it really doesn't matter too much. Alright, I'm not going to do any more of that. What I had been doing is using either my number 6 or a flat brush with water to kind of lighten up some of these areas to give some of the, like maybe right here, lightening that up and then hitting it with a paper towel to kind of give some of that whiter light to it. I mean, that works sometimes and other times it doesn't. Just trying to distinguish this rock field. It's really not important that it looks like a rock field. It's more that it looks like a foreground. I added some white stuff up in here and a little more definition of these four. Well, there's more than four. I just put 4 kind of small rock boulders up there towards the shore. Let's see here. And sometimes I just kind of work on a space, and things kind of develop on their own, whether intentional or not. And that's the beauty of painting. Sometimes you can just make things happen. That's why I enjoy painting. It kind of takes you away from the moment, and I'm not going to say it takes you from reality, but it does take you away from what you're thinking about at the moment, and as you strive to work on, creating things, creating scenes, creating images. Now that looks, at least to me, a little more like a defined rock. Sort of like this is the top and this is a side area, and maybe this is the other side. And that's the beauty of watercolor. You can blend and mix right on the paper. And you could do the same thing with acrylic. I did a picture of a bunch of rocks on a trail in Western Virginia, and western state of Virginia. Here's an image of that. And you can see that one took me like a couple months to get those rocks right. And I'm not spending as much time on this one as I did on that one. I really had trouble with that one. And some of those rocks really came out looking nice. So as with everything in painting, if something is challenging to you, practice and practice. That's the way to figure out how to do it and get better at it. At least that's my thought. Well, that's about as far as I'm going to take it this time. There's always more you can go, but sometimes too much is too much. So I think I'm going to say that's it for this painting. So I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on the trail.